We're up to Oish Vav. So the Rebbe is continuing to explain from the Maimer that the main thing is through Gashmius, that the physical mitzvahs, they are the ones that actually bring down. The Yesh Amiti comes through the Mamish the Gashmis. That's the hard kosher or that the Amud stands on, and it's actually mechaber that you make the gag and the ritzpah, you make it all one. That all happens over here, begashmis ba'olam hazeh. The Rebbe is going to continue to explain. So we have the idea of keresh, and he said the keresh is mahapich sheker, same letters, and it's also kesher, brings the knot between Hashem, as he mentioned earlier in the Maimer. Now in the Maimer, he continues to explain the letter Kuf. You know, the letter Kuf is similar to the letter Hey. The only difference is that the Kuf goes down in below the line, goes down. That represents Klippa that goes beneath the line, and he's going to explain the pasuk of Gar Chayes Kone that you have to cut off that kone, that stick, and instead of having the kuf lie, it should become a hey, which would make the letter hine. Hine is gilu, is kedusha, instead of kone. Let's look inside. Hine mamshir bahamaimer continues in the maimer. Bebiur haremes dois kuf, explaining the hint of the letter kuf. Again, in the word Keresh, there is the kuf. What is the kuf? The hint is Asherag lehasmolis nimshach ad lamata mata. The left leg of the letter kuf, the right one is in the line, but the left leg is nimshach, extends ad lamata mata till lower. The Beklolus, generally speaking, Humasha Kosuv. So he brings down from the Te'ilim, it says, Ga'ar Chayas Kone. So Kone, that's the stick of the Kuf. That's called the Kone. Ga'ar means to yell, to cut off that Chayas, that energy, that recipient of the Kone. The kone is going to explain is the clipper. That's the stick that goes down. The recipient is malchus of clipper. That's the chayas kone. That is energized by the kone. The recipient, the makabel of the kone. We have to cut down. We have to ge'ar the chayas kone. This is the inyan kone hu kone oruch shenimshach lemato. The idea of kone is it's a long stick that goes below. What is this stick? What is this kone aruch? V'hu dechar de klipa. That is the male, the masculine of klipa. That's the stick that goes down. The chayas kone. What is the chayas of the kone? Hu nukva de klipa. That's the feminine of klipa, the recipient from the kone. B'chinas Malchus the Klippa. That's the level of Malchus, the recipient, the level of Malchus of Klippa. So the Kone is the Mashpia. That would be like the level of Zoh or Yisoid of Klippa, and the recipient from that is Malchus. Shemikabeles Ma'adachar, she receives, the Klippa receives from the male, and you have to cut them down. You have to cut down the kuf and the chayis corner. You need to ar chayis corner. You have to cut down the malchus and the corner have to be cut down. The zo gaar chayis corner. This is gaar to yell and to cut away the Chayas Kona. What does this mean in the service of Hashem? What is the Chal? What's the feminine? What's the masculine of Klippas? And what is the recipient, the feminine of Klippas? So the actual bad character traits, those are the masculine. That's the bad midas. The recipient is the malchus, is the sort of the Kabbalah soil of Klippas. Let's look inside. And in service of the man, of a person, the feminine of Klippa, that's the character traits that are no good. What is Ubchinas Malchus, the Klippa? What's the feminine of Klippa? That's the idea. Shenase is kufa hanidresus chulu. That he becomes a threshold that is being stepped on. That's a level when you say that a person becomes receptive to all kinds of bad stuff. He say he becomes like a threshold that is stepped upon. You become a threshold. You become a place which all clippers take hold. What does that mean? That is accepting the yoke of the other side. When you accept and you just across the board accept that, that is accepting the yoke of the umazeh, of the other side. So that's the idea of the feminine, the malchus of klippa of the umazeh. And what needs to happen needs to be to ga'ar, to cut away the chayas kona. To cut away the kona literally would mean to cut that stick down. That stick that goes down to klippa, cut it off. What happens when you cut off the long stick? It turns into a hay. So instead of kone, you get hine. It's he, hey, nun, hey. Tzorich li is got a tzorich lahachris as kone hakuf. You need to cut off the stick of the kuf, and that is velish by as geoin aritzin, to break the arrogance of the mighty, of the aritzim, of the klippas. As kone hakuf, through cutting that stick of the kuf, cutting it down to size so it becomes a hay. Nasem is a hay. So then it becomes a hay. But oz, instead of kone, who tevas hine, then it becomes hine. Hine is revelation, shows on kedusha. So instead of a long kuf which goes to klippa, it becomes hine. But oz who tevas hine. Then the hine moide al hagilui. Hine means here. Here is, when you say hine, shows on revelation. And gilu you in your kedusha. Revelation is kedusha. That means you turned it from klippa to kedusha. When you cut off the kuf, you made it into a hay. You made it into hine. Then that represents kedusha. And we see that hine represents kedusha because that's what we say with regards to the future when things will be revealed. Therefore, in the future, as asher oz yizgalu kol inyone hakedusha bepnimis, then in the future, where all matters of kedusha that are now in the inner, they're not revealed, they're hidden, they're inside, they're in a pnimis. So then, when everything will be revealed, shayiru oisam bemuchash beini basar, and then people will see it. Actually, with the eyes of flesh, you can actually see godliness. So what do we say over there? We say hine. Hine is gilui. Ksiv, va'omar b'yoyim hahu. What are we going to say in those days when the Gilui of Mashiach? Hine Elokeinu zeh. Hine. Here, behold, this is our God. So that is by cutting off the kuf, making it into a hine, making it into a Gilui. How do we cut off the kuf? How do we cut it off? We do it now in order to merit the Gilui la'osid when it's going to be hine. We need to cut it off now. Ba'gilui de la'osid, the revelation of the future, u'al yidei ha'avodah da'achshav. That is through the service that we do now. Al yidei ha'avodah da'achshav. U'kemoi shemevayer b'hamaimer b's'ifim ha'koidmim. Like he explains in the Maimer in the previous Seifim, Umaskir Gamke b'Seif Zeh b'Rosh Prokim. Also in this Seif Tes, in the Maimer he mentions it in the headlines. Mentions that Shehu. What is the avodah that we talk about? Cutting off the stick. This is avodah. The ishapcho chashoicha linahoira. Umeriru lemisko, to turn around darkness, chashoicha, to light, to noira, and meriru, bitterness, to miska, to sweet, making from bitter sweet, which means shemahapchin esalo umazeh. We turn around the other side, the oisim imenu toiv v'kedusha, and you make from him good and holiness. Turn around the negativity, and you turn it around, you make it into good and holiness. Especially when we turn around darkness to light, when we have to struggle. There is blocks, there is obscurities, there is challenges, there is tests. And yet it doesn't affect him at all. He has all these challenges. He has the nisyonis. There's a love of stadium, and he doesn't let him affect him. Not only do the nisyonis not affect him, they don't weaken his resolve and his turning around into kedusha, the negative. Through these challenges, he becomes stronger. With additional strength. Additional power, and additional strength, to do his service. If he has a challenge, the challenge doesn't weaken him, but makes him stronger to work even more additional strength, additional power to do his service. Hine al yidei zeh, through this, that's the way you turn around from the shtus of the other side, lishdus to kedusha to shtus of kedusha. And that way, that's going to be the revelation of the future. That's why we say, Hine Elokeinu, Hine Elokeinu. This is going to be in the future, the revelation. Va'omar b'yoyim hahu, Hine Elokeinu zeh, goimer, zeh Hashem kivinu loi. So when here we say 2 times zeh, we don't say Hine Elokeinu zeh, kivinu loi v'yesheinu, Nogila v'nisucha b'shos, say again zeh. Zeh Hashem kivinu loi nogila v'nisucha b'shos. 2 times zeh. Beis pamim zeh. What is the idea of 2 pamim zeh? 2 times zeh. She is gale bechinas ani havaya loishanisi. Zeh means the same thing. Hashem Elokeinu zeh, this is the same. It's the level of Hashem where there is no change. Ani havaya loishanisi. Hine Elokeinu zeh is the same Shem havaya. That's the height of the level that comes down of the Gilui through the Ishapcha, that we are Mamshich, we reveal the level of Ani havaya loishanisi. Behu al yidei ha'avodah da'achshav begashmiyus dafke. And that's through the avodah now, during the time in Golus, before Mashiach, in which physical avodah prepares and turns around the skafia, the chasheichel and nahira, we get the gilui la'osid lava, hine lekenu zeh, zeh Hashem to be in the Lord. So what is the idea that our avodah now actually impacts the future? That we work now, but we see it in the future. He's going to compare it to idea of sowing. You sow the ground now, but the fruit come out later. They're not here right now. We do the avodah now, we sow the ground. We do the mitzvahs. We do the mitzvahs begashmis. These mitzvahs begashmis, eventually, when they grow up, la'asid love bring about that gilu, zayim. But in who the idea is kimoy shemevayel kvet kiddush asad murat tzomach tzedek barucha. As the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek explained at length, Al Posik on the verse, Haboim Yashresh Yaakov Yotzitzu Porach Yisrael. Those who will come, go back to Eretz Yisrael, Yashresh Yaakov. Yaakov will set root. Yotzitz will bud and blossom of Porach Yisrael. Basically, that the Yidden will root, they will root, and then it would blossom. Shahamitzvahs, what basically, when the Yidden that come, they do the mitzvahs. So basically, when mitzvahs take root, and then they blossom. Shahamitzvahs nikroyim b'shem ziriyah. The mitzvahs are referred to as sowing. Just like physically when we sow. When you sow, it needs to be specifically in the ground. Sowing takes place in the ground. In mitzvahs, now is called the ground because they're physical mitzvahs. This is in the earth, in Peril Mamish, in Gashmis. Just like physically sowing. It needs to be specifically in the ground. And it's dafke only then that the blossoming takes place. Likewise is with the sowing of the mitzvahs. When we sow the mitzvahs, they have to be sown in the ground. In order for them to affect their effect, they should accomplish the impact of the sowing so that it should grow. And what the pasuk says, yotzitzu porach, that it budded and it blossomed. And this that it blossomed is Hagilu del Osid, is the revelation of the future. Asher Yiyah Hine Lekenu Zeh. Over there, it's going to be, here is our God, the revelation of Losid, who al yidei zriyas hamitzvahs be'eretz hagashmis davke. That is through sowing the mitzvahs in the physical oretz, in the earth davke. This gashmis is in two. The person who does the mitzvah lives in this olam hazeh gashmi, and he does the mitzvah in physical matters of this world gashmi. In two ways is this the eretz. Bein mitzad hamitzvahs atzmo. The mitzvah itself, shenislabshu begashmiyus kenal. They have dressed up in physical, the mitzvahs, as the Rebbe spoke earlier, that the mitzvahs, all mitzvahs really dress up the gashmis, even the chevis halavavas, it's supposed to impact gashmis. And so the mitzvahs are dressed in gashmis. Ubein mitzad ha'adam ha'oived, and also from the perspective, the person who does the avodah, the mitzvah is the gashmis. The person who does the service, who does the mitzvah, who works this mitzvah, harei mitzvah is nitnu. L'neshama beguf dafke. Mitzvahs were given to a neshama in a body, meaning that's the gashmis. So the mitzvahs come down in gashmis matters. The person who serves it does the avodah is in Hashem Guf, and loyla neshama k'moshi l'maylo, not to the soul the way it's above, v'loyla malachim, and not to angels. Ki'im l'neshama k'moshi hi beguf hagashmi dafka. It comes down to a soul as it is in a physical body. Hine bazeh dafke, so dafke in this. Huzriyas garin hamitzvahs. Dafke, this is the sowing of the seed of the mitzvah. In the Gashmi, when you want to sow and you want to get the gilui, hinelikenu, it has to be in the physical body with a physical mitzvah. And that's the sowing garin mitzvah. Dezen asa apricha. That's the way the blossoming takes place. Okay, so why is that important? Important is Davke neshama beguf, which has challenges, which in a way is separated from Hashem. Amalach, neshamas lemailo, they're not separated from Hashem. They can't bring out the essence hisnasus of the melech. Who brings out that level of Hinei Lekenu, the level of Isnasus HaMelech that should come out, is only when there is Begashmis, when a person has two ways, he could do it or not do it. That's called separate. Through a Melech B'Lo'am, in a separate way from a king, that can bring out and take the essence of Isnasus. Let's look inside. How do we bring down? In the idea of there, it discusses how we bring down mamshich, the level which is called hasnasus atzmi Hashem, his essence, his raised being higher, shehu atzmus emusa, which is his essence and who Hashem is, Hashem himself. So how do you bring that? Is the ein melech beloy om. There cannot be a king without a people, which means you can't have a king on children, on his slaves. You need an am. What is an am? Meloshin oimemois v'nifrodim. From the language that they're when you have the coals that are going out, so they're no longer burning, and they have separated themselves from the coal itself, from the fire. When you have embers, when you have pieces of it coming, they're imimos, and they're separate, they're no longer part. That is a melech. A melech needs an am, needs somebody to be separate, distinct from him. Velochein, because who brings down this level? It's the am, the separation. Is hamshochas hamlucha v'hisnasus atzmi. How do we draw down the melucha and the essence hisnasus? Einoi alidei hamalochim. That's not through angels. The angels are not separate. They're still part. They're not oimemis, not nifrodim. Umekolshkenem for sure. Loi al yidei hanishamis k'moi shehem l'maylo. Not through nishamis the way they are above. Lihi yoisom bebitl, because they are in a state of bitl. K'moi shekosuv, the pasuk says, Chai havaya lekei Yisrael asher amaditi lefonov. He says, by the life Chai Shem lekei Yisrael, I stood before him. So over there, that means standing before Hashem is the level of total bittul. So you cannot call that oimemos. You cannot be a king. That cannot bring out the hisnasus atzmi. Ki'im, but how do you do? Hamshochas hamelucha v'hisnasus atzmi. How do you bring down the kingdom and that level of hisnasus atzmi? Who Al yidei avodas haneshama k'moy shehem lemato melubesh beguf kashmi. That is through the work of the neshama as it's below, dressed up in a physical body, not in a neshama above, not in malachim, but the neshama as it dressed up in guf gashmi. That is the oimamis. Over here, there's options. There's two paths this way. Kamesha Kosov, like the Pasuk says, Reino Sati, look, I've given you as Achayim Ves Hamaves, as Habrocha. You can either choose the good or the bad. There's possibility to choose, God forbid, also the opposite. So you have options, basically. That is what a neshama beguf is. He is separate in the sense he's not bottle. He has an opportunity. If he wishes to, God forbid, he can choose the other side. That is the am. A melech b'lo am. That's the level of oimemois that are going out. Those embers that v'nifrodim is separate. Shal yodom hu is galus hamlucha v'hisnasus atzmi. Through them is the revelation of the kingdom and the levels of hisnasus atzmi. Shalemailo mikol ha'irus v'agiluyim, which is higher than all of the lights, all of the revelation. This is hisnasus the atzmi itself. V'hu b'chinas ani havaya leishanisi. And that reveals the level of I Hashem have not changed, which is the highest level in Hashem, that none of these giluyim and none of these changes that take place in the world were impacted. He stays as is. Ani havaya loishanisi. So, if it doesn't change, so why are we saying that this will only be in the future? That level of Havaya that didn't change is present now as well. Why? So why do we wait for the future? Because that's when it's going to come out. Yes, it's now as well. There is the Gilui, but it's not the Muchash. We can't see it. That level of Aniyah Vaya Loishanisi is always constantly Sharazehu Amitis Ha'inyan, because that's the true. The true is that Hashem doesn't change. It's still an old Giluim. There's nothing. There's no change. But in order for it to be revealed vividly, we should be able to experience that. Kamesha Kosu, as the Pasuk says, Hine Zeh. In order to say Hine Zeh, which means, as the Chazal explained, Kol echad ve'echad mare be'etzboi, you can show, everybody can show with a finger saying Zeh, see. That level of revelation, Hinagilu b'muchash yil osidavke. That's is going to be only the reality, the vision in practically will be in the future. V'hu al yidei ha'avoda achshav lamato begashmi is davke. That is through the work over here below. Okay, our avoda brings down that revealed level of ani havaya nisi in lo osidavke. Bo'inyanhu. The Rebbe Maharash, the Rebbe brings down all the Rabbeim in this Maimer of Yud Shvat all the time. So the Rebbe brings down a point from all the Rabbeim. So the Rebbe brings down from the Rebbe Maharash, Al Posik, the Ahavas Oilam Ahavticha. Because I love you eternally, Ahavas Oilam, eternal love. I love you. The Eibishter says to the Yidden, Al kein mishachti chesed. That's why I have drawn down to you chesed, grace, and kindness. So, what is the meaning ahavas olam, eternal love? There is a love that says in Tonad Ve'elio for 3 years, for 10 years, for 100 years. But the love of the Eibishter is an eternal love. It says the Isa beTonad Ve'elio. We find in the Tonad Ve'elio, Asher Abbas HaKodesh Baruch Hu Yisrael, the love of Hashem to the Yidden. Shema Toimer Shehu Avo Shel Sholi Shonim. Maybe you'll say this is a love of 33 years, or Shel Eser Shonim, maybe of 10 years, or Shel Meir Shonim, maybe 100 years. He says, Einikin. It's not a love of 3, 10, or 100 years. It's not so. Ki'im Ahavas Olam Ahavticha is an eternal love. That is Ahavas Olam. Now, the Rebbe Marash will explain further the word Olam. Sometimes we say Avas Olam Ahavtanu, like in the davening. Over there we say a love of the world, which is a lower level of love. And sometimes we say Ahava Rabba, the great love. So in Chassidus it speaks about the level of Avas Olam is an Ava that comes mitzad the Olam, that's a limited, and Ava Rabba is a higher level. But over here, we're saying Avas Olam is the highest level of love. We're saying it's beyond the 3, 10, 100, it's Olam. There's two types, and the Rebbe explains in the word Olam. Either Avas Olam means a love of the world, that taka is a lower level. But Avas Olam means also an eternal love. Let's look inside. So Mevayer Kveit Kedushas Admur Mar Arash Nishmo Seiden Behemshech the Maim Rabim. So the Rebbe Marash explains in the Hemshech of Maim Rabim the Olam Huloshin Nitzchias, that the Olam is eternal. It's a language of eternal. V'zo Avas Olam Ava Nitzchias. This means Avas Olam is an eternal love. That doesn't contradict that which is written in many places. When we talk about the Av of Olam, that's in a lower madrega than Ava Rabba. And here, and here we're explaining that the level of Olam that this is the highest possible love. There's no higher love than this. So how do we reconcile? The Vayr explains the two meaning in Olam. Sheyesh beis pirushim ba'olam. Nitzchias, one it means Avas Olam means eternal, and Avas Olam can be Olam and world, meaning there's a love of eternity and a love of the world. Oh, the other Maimorim are talking about the love of the world, which is like a lower level. But here we're talking on the type of Avas Olam, an eternal love. Sheyesh beis pirush ba'olam, nicht ba'olam. V'yesh treinom. And then we say there are two worlds. There is Olam, and in Olam itself, world, there is two worlds. There's a lot more than two worlds, but generally speaking, there is Alma Disgali and Alma Diskasi. Ukamesha Kosuf. Ukamesha Kosuf. Baruch Havaya Lekei Yisrael, Min ha'olam ve'ad ha'olam. So bring down Hashem Elekei Yisrael from the Olam into the Olam. Usually it means to bring down from Seviv Kol Almim into Mamala Kol Almim. So we have two worlds. Trei Olamas. Min ha'olam ve'ad. Why are we talking about two worlds? It's endless amounts of world. Amalomis and Mispar. Dagam sheyeshnam harba olamis ad enkates. Although there is an endless amount of worlds, it's touched on the posik. Va'alomis ein mispar. So the Gemara, so Taiches there, Alomis ein mispar, means al tikra alomis ala oilamis, that there is infinite amount of worlds. Why are we saying two worlds? Min ha'olam v'ad ha'olam, the only two worlds. Amnam bechlolus, these worlds, shem nechlokin lebeis sugim klolim. They are divided into two general categories. Almodi is Galia, the Almodi is Kasya, the revealed world and the hidden world. Why are these the two? What does it mean, revealed world and hidden world, the two? The Almodi is Galia, who b'mida guvul v'tzimtzum b'yoser. The revealed world, that's measured, its boundaries, and there's restriction, very restricted. That's the revealed world. V'kasher ha'ava bo mehis boininus b'ha'oir sheb'mido gvul. That's why in those Maimorim, the avas olam, when the love comes from reflection in the light which is measured, its boundary, gvul v'tzimtzum sheba'olam, and the restriction of the world, the bechlolus hu b'chinas memalekul almim. Generally speaking, that's memalekul almim. When the hisboinenus is a memalekul almim, umizeh bo la'ava, and that brings him to the ava. Hine. So what kind of ava he gets? Ma'achar sha'ava bo mitzadover hamodul d'mugbal u'metzumtzum. Since the love comes from memalekul almim, something which is measured, limited, and restricted, lezois hi'ava mitzumtzemes ulamato me'avarabba, and that's why it's a restricted love, and it's lower than the avarabba, because it is an ava that comes from olam, as opposed to masha'enkin almo di iskasya, the olam, the higher level, the world of iskasya, min ha'olam v'ad olam, from the olam diskasya, hulamaylo memedido gavul, that's higher than measure and limit and boundaries. Valderech the isa b'gemore, similar to what the Gemara says that the blessing only rests if something that is hidden from the eye. V'inyan dovurs hasomu min ha'ayin sheshoyde boy bracha, that the blessing rests on something which is somewhere min hidden from the eye, which means it's not limited by the haino she'ein bo hagbolus, that there is no limitations. So this second level of avarabba, v'hu inyan avas olam meloshin nitzchias, that level is avas olam, is an eternal love, not a love of the world, but an loshin nitzchias shehi lemayla mimadrega, that is on a higher level, higher step. Loy rak mibchinas oyavas olam ha'agbola, the bchinas memale kol, the bchinas memale, not only higher than memale ki'im, gam mibchinas soyev. Then you have the eternal love, which is nitzchias, but he says it's higher, not olam from olam hagbola, not only from a male, but it's even higher than soyev. That's the avas olam, the eternal love. And it teaches the 3, the 10, and the 100 that mentioned in the Tonot Ve'Eliyahu represent the various different levels of Memalekul Almim until you come to the Avas Olam. The Zehu Inyan, this is the idea of the Avas Shel Sholish Shonim. We have a limit of 3 years. There's also a limit of Eser Shonim that mentioned the Tonot Ve'Eliyahu, Omeya Shonim, but this is even higher than all that, as said in the Tonot Ve'Eliyahu. The Chayis Eliki K'moi Shehu B'Hagbola B'Gimel Olam Ezbiyah, the godly energy, vitality, as it is limited in the 3 worlds of Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, Hu Inyan Sholish Shonim, that's a love of 3 years. A love of Biyah is the level of Ava Sholishonim. Dilihiyos. Why is the level that comes from Biyah called the love of Sholishonim? Because in each world we have three levels. Dilihiyos asher b'chol olam yesh bo inyan olam shono nefesh. In each world we have the world, time, which is man shona year, and nefesh soul. Lochein hina gimul olam is nikroim b'shem sholishonim. That's why we call them 3 years, because each of these three worlds have the three categories of olam shona nefesh. That's all the level of biyah. Avo shel eser shonim, the level of 10 years love, is b'chinas ha'atzilus. That's the level of atzilus. Why 10? The ba'atzilus u inyan eser sfiras. Over there is the 10 sfiras. That's b'chinas eser shonim, 10 years. So 3 is biyah, and 10 is atzilus, because there is 10 sfiras in atzilus, and that's called 10. V'hu l'maylo mibiyah, and that's a higher level of the bri yitzira asira. Sharei ba'atzilus hu eser sfiras blima. Are you going to say to me, 10 spheres are also in Bri Yitzira Asiyah? Why are we saying the 10 spheres of Atzilus? Because in Atzilus it's a higher level of 10 spheres, which is high. Because in Atzilus we say that it's Eser spheres bli ma, without ma, which means the im hayosom Eser spheres, even though it's still 10 spheres in Atzilus, it's not the same as in Biyah. When we say 10, well, what do you mean 10? 10 means a limitation. Can't say that it's not limited. Eser v'loy teisha, we're saying it's 10 and not 9. Eser v'loy achados, it's 10 and not 11. So, yes, there is 10 spheres in Atzilus. Mikol mokim heim bli ma, v'ulamaylo mibiyah, but still they are without ma, and that is higher than biyah. Shari bichdei sheyiyeh hamshocha lebiyah me'atzilus, because if you want to be mamshich to biyah from atzilus, you have to go idea parsa. You have to go through a curtain. That means that it's in a whole different level, Atzilus. Atzilus also, that it's next and close to Hashem. It's called the world of Agdus. When you say Belima, it means they don't yet have a substance. They're not a yesh. There's nothing there. It's ma. It's not really. It's sfiras, yes, but the Rebbe brings out in a general way that this is higher than the Atzilus. They have to go through a curtain to get through Atzilus, and Atzilus is next to the Eibishter. So therefore, that's the level of Eser. Also, Atzilus is limited. It's not the ultimate love. But Abo shel Meyashonim, what's the love of 100 years? Who are Kamoshu Bechinas HaKeser. That's the light as it's in Keser. Shel Lamaylam Atzilus, higher than Atzilus. That's 100. That's the level of Keser. Uklolus Olam Esoyin Sof Shel Maylam Atzilus. Generally, the worlds of Ein Sof that are higher than Atzilus, Nichlolim Kulam Bechinas HaKeser. They're all included in Keser. V'Inya Meyashono, that's Meyashono, that's Keser. Okay, Mavur Bezoyer al Posig. We see the number 100 representing Keser. Al Posig Vayiyu Chayisora Meyashono. So the Zoyer says the Meyashono who b'chinas HaKeser, that Meyashono is Keser. Asar Klolo the Kula. It's a general place, a general world of all. Asar Klolo the Kula. Asar Ilo, it's a higher place. That's the level of Keser. What is the number 100? 10 times 10. Hayut Sfiras K'mesh Kolechot Kolu Miyud. The 10 Sfiras, as each one is included of 10, Hu Inya Meyashon. That's 100 years. So we have already the level of Biyah, That's Sholish. We have the level of Eser, which is the level of Atzilus Eser. And then we have level Mei, which is Keser. But that's not yet the ultimate. Hafa became Haragam HaKeser B'chlal Oilamis. Keser is also included in the world. He's part of the world, even though it's in the level that surrounds the world. But so what are we saying? It's connected to the world. So even though the fact that it's around the world, it still has a connection. Not an inner connection, but at least it's surrounded. That's why we call him, he surrounds the world, so it's connected to it. The Pasuk says in Tonville, that's a nitzchis, avas olam. Milashoy nitzchis, eternal, umitzad atzmus shobli gvul. That is because of atzmus, which has no limit. Shalamaylo gam mibchinas meyashona, which is even higher than 100 years. Ubechlolus, generally speaking, uinyan eser sfiras shebemaitzel. Those are the 10 spheres, the way they are in the Maitzel, in this, the one who separates it. Eser spheres agnus is the hidden Eser spheres. The Metzad Bechina Zu, when there is the level of love from this level of Eser spheres agnusis, he Avas Nitzchis. That's an eternal love. So that's the highest love. But Baruch Hashem, we bring down from that level into the world. To bring down from the olam to the olam. The intent is you have to draw down from the world which is highest until the world which is the lowest. That it should be felt that it's all one, the highest of worlds. Eses Sfiras Agnus with the lowest world. That connection, it's one. As the Maimer says, Gag v'ritzpa echod mamish, to make the roof and the floor to be one. These are the two interpretations of Asoilom. Oilom kipshutei. Olam means a love of the world, literally. Olam has a hagashmi, that means this physical world. The aim mikra yetzim pshute doesn't go out from its simple meaning. It's a love of the world. Uba olam kipshute, and in this world, hamshachas b'chinas olam, we bring down from the olam loshen itzchis, eternity, to bring down hukemoishen isbar leil. Asher b'chinas ani avai l'shenisi, that level of ani avai l'shenisi, the eternal, the level of the pshita atzmus, isnasus atzmis, heder hashinui u'masher l'mayla mishinui. That's lack of change and what's above change. That level comes into the world. Shu atzmus shalamayla koloides. That's atzmus, the higher no loides. Shar b'chol b'chinas oir yesh b'shinui, because if it's an oir, there's change. Only place where is loisha nisi is in atzmus. Can't say it on oir. This bringing down the level of nisi, in this world will also love it dafka in the future. So here we have the level that we're mamshich, not only from biyah, the Ava that comes is bonus in Biyah, not only this bonus in Atzilus, not in Keser, but in the essence Shuris Agnuzis, and the level of Aniyah Ba'ile Shenisi, and that's Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael, into the Mokim Kipshutei, in the Gashmis, in the Olam Kipshutei, from the Olam eternity, from the level of Aniyah Ba'ile Shenisi, and that is brought down in this world, and that will come out Le'osid Love. Okay, we'll be mamshif this. I went a little bit longer.
Okay.